So there we go. Okay, let me make sure my audio is working. Yeah, audio is good now. Okay, so we're going to get started on home finance. Hopefully, again, you have the booklet. You could download it from the blog. You could download it from OneNote. And if you just absolutely can't find the booklet, of course, you could just jot the things down that we're writing on loose leaf, and then when you find the booklet later, you could copy them in. Guys who are watching this on video at home, you can go to the blog and watch the video that we watched before this that talked about comparing renting versus buying. It was really interesting. And all right, let's start with the money that goes out. Let's start with talking about paying a mortgage. So, first of all, I guess the basic definition of what is the amortization period. Okay, and where did my pen go? There we go. Okay, and so the amortization period is the length of time in years that you will need to pay off a mortgage. And again, the word mortgage itself just means it's the payments you are making to own a piece of property or a house. Okay? Equity is the portion of the value of your property that you own. Obviously, when I get a mortgage for a house, I don't own it right away. Right? Again, as the video we watched a few minutes ago talked about, when you are buying a mortgage to buy a house, you're kind of renting money. You're renting the bank's money and using it to buy the house. So if you want to think about it, the bank owns the house more than you do, at least until you've paid for a few years into your mortgage. So the equity is the part that you have paid for that you own. If you put down a down payment, you own that much of the house. Interest is the finance charge, how much extra you pay to borrow the money. This is, of course, how the bank makes money, by charging you interest. Everybody here who took the grade 10 or 11 essential course, you've done calculations with interest before. That will pop up again in a minute. The principal, and notice that's spelled with a P-A-L, not principal, like a rule you live by. Principal is spelled the same way as the person who runs a school. Principal is the amount borrowed, also called the mortgage amount. The unpaid balance is the portion of the value of the property owed. And again, they don't say to the bank. Just like in vehicle finance, they say the financial institution, because there are lenders out there besides banks. There's credit unions, for example. And actually, in the United States, I think the majority of homeowners do not use their own personal bank as their mortgage holder. There are companies that are not really banks. Fannie Mae is one of them. That they're basically in the mortgage business. They don't have standalone banks that you can drive up to and make deposits and all that kind of stuff. And they're just mortgage companies. And in 2008 they crashed hard. They pretty much crashed the world's economy because they were so bad at their jobs. But anyway, we'll talk more about that later in the unit. Understand, you buy a house worth $200,000 and make a down payment of $20,000. How much is your mortgage? And again, this is like asking the question, how much do you need to borrow from the, I'll say bank. I know, again, it's not just banks that sell you mortgages nowadays. So how much do you need to borrow from the bank to buy the house? Well, how much is your mortgage? If it's a $20,000 house, you make a down payment of $20,000, you just subtract those, and it'd be $180,000, right? 200,000 minus 20,000. What is your equity? Well, you made a payment of $20,000, so you own $20,000 of the house. What is the unpaid balance? Well, the second you buy the mortgage, you haven't made any payments on it yet, so you still owe the bank $180,000. of balance. But of course, you'll be paying interest on that. Now, there are several types of mortgages. Oh, actually, before we move on to types of mortgages, let's put in a formula. Your monthly payments. That's why we have this room in here. We're going to put a formula in here. The monthly payment is equal to the mortgage amount divided by 1,000 times the table value. Hey, does this formula look familiar? Oh yeah, this was the formula we used in the last chapter to figure out vehicle payments. It works the same in this chapter. The table, this chapter has more than one table though. This is actually, I think in your notes, this is table 6. Let me just make sure I'm not lying about that. At the end of the booklet, let's see. Oh, hang on. Did I go too far? There we go. Table 4, table 5, there it is. Yep, table 6. This is the table that works for the formula we just did. Okay, so it's at the end of the book. Phew, thought for a second there, the screen went blank and I forgot thought maybe I forgot to put them on there. So there we go. So they're at the end of the book. Okay, back to lesson 1 here. There we go. Okay, types of mortgages. What types of mortgages are there? Well, there's first of all a closed mortgage, which is a mortgage which does not allow payments on the principal. So it's the kind of mortgage where if you suddenly had some extra money, like, oh, somebody passed away and left you some money, or oh, you got a big bonus from your job, or you made a big sale and you got a big commission, and you're like, well, what should we do with this money? Well, it's like, big vacation, buy a big screen TV. Well, the smarter thing might be, maybe I'll put it onto my mortgage so that, you know, I make my payments a little lighter and pay off my mortgage a little faster. But if you have a closed mortgage, you actually can't do that. You cannot make payments to the principal. You can make extra payments to the interest, but not the actual principal. An open mortgage is a mortgage that allows you to add extra payments if you suddenly find yourself with some extra cash and would like to do something smart with it. A fixed rate mortgage is a mortgage with where the interest rate is fixed, meaning it doesn't change for a specific period of time. And the fixed rate mortgage, I'm going to say, may be slightly more expensive to pay per month. But you are protected from market, big fancy word here, fluctuations. Why do I pick words I can't spell? Fluctuations. Have you noticed in the news, they'll always say, oh, the interest rate, Canada's interest rate is up, Canada's interest rate is down, the Bank of Canada has decided to freeze the interest rate. What that means is the price at which banks can lend you money is set by our government so that banks cannot go crazy and charge people an enormous amount of money. And the Bank of Canada, the government of Canada, will allow that rate to go up or down. If the market says, hey, things are going well, it can go up. If things are going bad, it can go down. Right now, interest rates are really, really low. It would probably not be a good idea to get a fixed rate mortgage right now. But if things started to change, if it started to look like the banks might start raising interest rates and the government would allow it, then you'd want to get yourself a fixed rate mortgage to protect you from the fact that the interest rate might go up. In the 1980s, I know that's a long time before any of you were born, and I was just a kid, but I do remember this. The 1980s, interest rates climbed quite sharply over a few years to the point where some people couldn't afford their mortgages anymore and had to default on them or sell their home, because when they went to renegotiate their mortgage after their 5-year term was up, suddenly the jump in the interest rate was too much for them to handle. So it would take a lot for that to happen again, and there are, I think, some protections in place so that that doesn't happen as easily as it did in those days. But if you are afraid that, oh no, my mortgage, I don't want to have to pay more for my mortgage because the interest rate might go up, you can get a fixed rate mortgage. A variable rate mortgage is a mortgage where the interest rate may change, again, a better word might be fluctuate, from month to month. And this one will be slightly cheaper, as in, probably no more a savings than, $50 a month, if that. So maybe slightly cheaper per month. But if interest rates go up, so does your mortgage payments. All right. Keep in mind, everything you buy gets more expensive over time, right? The name for that, you learned this if you took the grade 11 essential math course, right? You call that inflation. You notice in that video we watched, they talked about comparing 25 years of buying a house and paying a mortgage versus renting but saving the difference. And they said at the end, well, we'll adjust for inflation, right? Inflation is, of course, the fact that everything costs more over time. And interest rates are no different, right? The bank sells you a loan, sells you a mortgage. 10 years from now, that same mortgage will cost you more money. That's inflation. All right, example 1. Find the monthly payment for a $75,000 mortgage for 25 years at 6.75%. So my monthly payment is, let's use our formula, the mortgage amount divided by 1,000 times my table value. So let's calculate that mortgage payment. So it's a $75,000 mortgage, that's an equal sign, sorry. $75,000 mortgage divided by 1,000 times, and our table value. So now, here's where we got to read our table value. 25 years at 6.75%. By the way, mortgage rates right now are way, way lower than this. My last one, I think I'm just barely over 4. Mortgage rates are really good right now. But anyway, 25% at 6.75. So let's jump down to the table 6. So this is going to be, sorry if I make you dizzy as I scroll here. And table 4, table 5, which is sideways, table 6. So what was it again? It was 25 years at 6.75%. So 25 years is the last column, 6.7. So I'm going to be this row and this column. And there it is. That's the number we want. Okay, does everybody get how I found that? Okay, I'm going to undo the highlighting because I don't want my table all messed up. Okay, and now let's go back. So we got our number. It's 6.85. So I'm going to just jump back to the notes here. So 6.85. Oops, now I'm still on highlighter. Sorry. Duh. Okay, let's get rid of that. 6.85. And then we'd punch buttons. By the way, notice that if you divide a number by 1,000 and it has 3 zeros on it, there, you're done that. And that would then be 75 times 6.85. I've already done this. It's $513.75. So there we go. So that's your monthly mortgage payment if you get a $75,000 mortgage. Let's face it, that's just a simple example. $75,000 wouldn't buy you a shed to live in, let alone a house or a condominium. Example 2 is a little more reasonable. Again, maybe a little bit cheap for Winnipeg, but a couple purchased a home at $160,000. They made a down payment of $35,000. If they negotiated a mortgage at 7.25% over 25 years, calculate the amount they would need to borrow for the mortgage. So, first of all, they have a $160,000 house, and we're going to assume all of the things they talked about in that first video, like closing costs and legal fees and land transfer fees, are all built into this number. Later in the chapter, we'll start looking at how we calculate those things individually. But for right now, we'll keep it simple. The total price, including everything, is $160,000. They made a down payment of $35,000, so let's take away $35,000, and that's $125,000 that they're going to have to borrow from their bank or their credit union or their lender. So my monthly payment is how much I'm borrowing, just using the formula here, divided by 1,000, times, okay, now I got to go look for that table number again. I don't feel like scrolling anymore. I'll let you do it. So go to the table, I'll give you a sec, and see if you can find the right number. 7.25% over 25 years. So go to table 6, and I'll give you a sec, see if you can find the number. So what number are we putting right here that we get from our table? I'll give you a sec to look it up. So again, this is from table 6. Holy cow, that was fast. That's faster than I could have scrolled on the screen. Somebody got it already, and they got 7.16, and that is correct. That is the right number. You looked in the right place. So, and again, notice you can simplify the calculation a little. If you divide a number by 1,000, you just knock off 3 zeros or move 3 decimal places in. So there we go. So it's 125 times that, which is $895. So okay, I'll run through it again. Where did the 7.16 come from? It's 7.25 for 25 years. I go to table 6, which is at the end here. All the tables are at the end of the booklet. Table 5 there. This is table 6. So again, it's 7.25 for, what did we say? For 25 years. So the final category. So 7.25 for 25 years. There's that number. Can you see it? 7.16. So that's how they got it. Okay. Any other questions on how I got this far? Okay. Now, calculate the amount of interest they would pay over the life of the mortgage. Ooh, okay, so this is $895 they pay every month. There's 12 months in a year, and it's a 25-year mortgage, right? So this is how many months and years, right? So they make that payment of $895 12 times, 25 times. And when you multiply that out, you're going to get $268,500. Correct. Then, keep in mind, they borrowed $125,000. And usually, this is the first example like this we do with this class. And usually, I'm sorry, we only have one person in the room right now, and everybody else is online, and I can't hear you. There's usually an audible gasp from the crowd when you see how much you're paying to the bank in interest. There you go. Somebody give me a gasp. That was good. Thank you. Notice that's actually more than you borrowed. You only borrowed $125,000. You paid $143,500 in interest. Now, again, right now, I'm happy to tell you, mortgage rates are lower than 7.25%. But that's pretty much the way mortgages work. Banks are not your friend. Banks are not there as a public service to hold on to your money for you and keep it safe and give you calendars every year. Although I think they still give you calendars every year, right? Banks are businesses, and they make their money by charging you interest. And unless you happen to have $125,000 sitting in a savings account, you have no choice but to pay for a mortgage.
Credit unions are like, what is it again?
Credit unions are banks too, but they're run essentially as a nonprofit, right? But even that's not entirely true. They can be run at a profit, but that profit goes to the people who own the bank, and instead of it being investors and extremely rich people who own shares of a bank in the stock market, it's the company itself that started the credit union. Like, for example, the Winnipeg Police Service has its own credit union downtown. So any interest profit made by that bank, that money just goes back into the pension fund for the police. Farmers keep a credit union, right? There's credit unions for groups of farm communities where any profits go back, so that if farmers have to, go to that institution for help in lean years, there's money there for them to do it. So it's not entirely true that they're run as a non-profit. They're run as a profit. Even credit unions are run as a profit, but that profit goes back to the people who started the credit union. Again, Americans would call it communism, but you don't see too many credit unions down there. All right, the amount of interest on the first payment. Okay, so how much interest did we pay on the first payment? Well, who remembers the interest formula from grade 10 and 11? Anybody? It's one of the easiest formulas to remember in math.
Is it interest divided by?
No, some people call it the Pert Formula. Remember it? Interest equals principal times rate times time. Here, I'll put it in words. Interest equals principal, and I just misspelled principal times rate times time. Now, I'm a math guy, right? I'm a mathematician. When I write down two variables or three variables, I don't put a little time symbol between them. I know that in my head, this means this number times this number times this number. If that freaks you out and you want to write down I equals principal dot rate dot time, if you want to use little x's for multiply, I try as hard as I might. I can't force my fingers to make the x symbol for multiply when I start using variables. It just feels wrong to me. So there we go. Interest is principal times rate times time. So the interest is, what was the principal again? Principal, if you look back a page, that's how much you borrowed. So $125,000. What's the rate on this interest? Well, it is 7.25%. Now careful, you remember this from all walks of math. You can't work with percents when you calculate, so you got to change that to a decimal. It is not 0.7, it's 0.07, right? Do you remember why that is? Because to change from a percent to a decimal, you divide it by 100. So that moves the decimal over 2 places. And time, now, the time here has to be in months. But wait a minute, that interest rate, this is 7.525% per year, and you're making monthly payments. So how much of a year is a month? How much of a year is a month? As a fraction. Anybody? How much of a year is 1 month?
1/12.
That is exactly right. The number that's going here is 1/12. Why? Because that's a month is 1/12 of a year. Good work. So there we go. I'm going to use my calculator to do that, and I can even use my 1/12. I can use my fraction button to do the 1/12, or you can go 1 divided by 12. You can go 125,000 times 0.0725 times 1 divided by 12 and hit equals, and you should get this number. Give it a try to make sure that your buttons are working properly. Okay? Make sure that you can get that. So that's how much interest there was on the first payment you made. Now, how much were the payments again? Look back, $895. So of the $895 mortgage payments, $755.21 went to interest. And, okay, quick subtract. 895 minus 755.21. And when I do that, I get $139.79 went to principal. So yeah, for the first long while, when you take out a mortgage, most of the payments you're making are going to the interest on your loan. That will change over time, and we'll look at that change over time in our next lesson. All right, let's just do oh, actually, that is it. That's the only example we got. In our next lesson, we'll take a look. This amount here will go smaller over time, and this amount here will get bigger. But as you're going to see, it really takes a while. Now, lesson 2 is probably going to take us a couple days, because I'm also going to show you how to do something. If you've never done it before, it's really a useful skill to have in life. I'm going to show you how to use Excel. So those of you who are at home on a computer, if you have access to Microsoft and Excel, we're going to show you how to do an Excel spreadsheet. If we don't get to it next class, it'll be the class after. So lesson 2 will take us a couple days. So that actually gives you a couple of days to work on the first assignment for lesson 1. And the assignment for lesson 1, so there's an assignment booklet. What is this? Go away. There's an assignment booklet that you have handed out to you, but again, I put it on the blog, and it's here on OneNote, and there we go. It's at the end right now. Let me just go to the beginning. So lesson 1, assignment 1 is all calculations just like the ones we just did. There's only 4 questions. It's got an answer key, so you can work on that. You've got about 20 minutes right now, and then you could be homework free. Because again, I always tell, even though we're doing this learning from home stuff, I'm not going to change my tune. I don't think this course has much homework. You should be able to probably finish most things in class. So if you get started right now, you could probably be homework free. And then tomorrow we're going to start in on lesson 2. Okay, I haven't done attendance yet, so I'm going to do attendance right now. Okay, so, and by do attendance, I mean I'm going to download the list and then go print it and go pick it up. Oh, I guess I could stop my video too.